For those who don't know me, my name is Renaud Meyer, and I'm the UNDP resident representative here in Thailand. I've been in the country for 6 months, a bit more now, and I'm very happy that in 6 months I've already met many of you and engaged in many conversations about development issues, which is what brings us here together this morning. A midterm review in UNDP is an important moment of our relationship with the countries where we work. It's a time when we press pause, on what we do, and we kind of reflect whether what we do is relevant for the country and for the people of the country where we work, what we can do better, what we should stop doing, what we should reflect with our partners. So consultations and feedback is extremely important, and this is why we're pleased that you have responded positively to our invitation. In terms of process, this is the 4th such meeting. We have organized similar consultations over the past 2-3 weeks with our partners from civil society, with our partners from the development sector, so embassies and other UN agencies mostly, and just, was it last week or earlier this week, with a private sector representative with whom we work. So there is this saying, we keep the best for last, right? I don't know, but you're last. I don't know what that means. But clearly, given who UNDP is as an organization, an intergovernmental organization, we work for the people of Thailand, but of course our main partner is the government of Thailand. So this interaction this morning is going to be very important for us, and it will be articulated around 2 big moments. So we'll first have this introduction from us to you in terms of what we have done, but a bit of who we are, but that many of you know already, and maybe more importantly, how we think when we look at Thailand and its development challenges. We have selected 2 short videos that we would like to show you, and I will give a few comments about those videos because we believe that they capture quite well who we are and how we work. Right? So as a easy introduction to more intellectual conversations, let's first watch a video, 2 videos actually.
สวัสดีครับผมสิงห์วรรณสิงห์ประเสริฐกุลนะครับวันนี้อยากจะชวนทุกคนมาพูดคุยกันในเรื่องหนึ่งซึ่งตัวผมเองเนี่ยศึกษาแล้วก็ใช้เป็นแก่นหลักของการทำงานและเดินทางมานานนะครับก็คือเรื่องของความขัดแย้งและความเกลียดชังนะครับซึ่งเป็นเรื่องที่จริงๆหลายคนอาจจะไม่อยากคุยถึงเท่าไหร่แต่ว่าเป็นเรื่องสำคัญมากๆในโลกยุคปัจจุบันความขัดแย้งและความรุนแรงเนี่ยมันเริ่มจากคอนเซ็ปต์ง่ายๆก่อนเลยคือคำว่าพวกเขาและพวกเราโดยการที่เราจะเกิดความเกลียดชังในกระบวนการนี้ได้แน่นอนมันต้องมีกลุ่มให้แบ่งก่อนเราเกลียดคนนี้เพราะเขาอยู่เผ่านี้เราเกลียดคนนี้เพราะเขาอยู่ศาสนานี้เราเกลียดคนนี้เพราะเขาเป็นเกย์แล้วเขาเป็นเลสเบี้ยนอะไรก็ตามแต่คือแบ่งกลุ่มคนแล้วเอาคำว่ากลุ่มหรือว่ายี่ห้อของพวกเขาไปแปะทุกสิ่งที่พวกเขาเป็นทั้งหมดโดยไม่ดูว่าในฐานะปัจเจกบุคคลเขาเป็นยังไงบ้างนี่คือความเกลียดชังที่ผมพูดถึงอยู่ตอนนี้อาจจะยังไม่ใช่ปัญหาหลักในสังคมแต่ว่าถ้าปล่อยไปเรื่อยๆถ้าการแบ่งกลุ่มมันชัดเจนกว่านี้ในอนาคตเป็นปัญหาแน่นอนเพราะว่าทั้งหมดทั้งปวงมันเริ่มจากจุดนี้แล้วครับจุดที่เราเริ่มแบ่งกลุ่มชัดเจนแล้วมองว่าอีกกลุ่มหนึ่งไร้สาระและเป็นปัญหาสังคมเพราะฉะนั้นเราเลยคิดว่าสังคมไทยต้องพูดเรื่องนี้แต่เนิ่นๆเพราะว่าเรากำลังมุ่งไปในทิศทางนี้แล้วด้วยสเกลของการเปลี่ยนแปลงทางความคิดในโลกยุคดิจิทัลเนี่ยมันอาจจะไม่ต้องหมักหมมเป็น10-20 ปี50 ปีเหมือนในอดีตแล้วก็ได้มันอาจจะหมักหมมใน5 ปีแล้วกลายเป็นความรุนแรงที่ชัดเจนกว่านี้ ทีนี้คำถาม100 ล้านที่ตามมาก็คือว่าแล้วเราทำอะไรได้บ้างแน่นอนในฐานะคนคนเดียวอะเริ่มต้นด้วยการเปิดใจก่อนพูดคุยกับคนที่คิดไม่เหมือนเราพูดคุยกับคนที่เราไม่ชอบก่อนหน้านี้เปิดใจฟังเขาจริงๆแต่นั่นคือแค่ตัวเราคนเดียวก่อนทำยังไงให้ความคิดเหล่านี้ขยายไปสู่ผู้คนได้หนึ่งก็คงจะเป็นการพยายามสื่อสารกับคนจำนวนมากเท่าที่เราทำได้บางครั้งเราอาจจะคิดสิ่งที่เรียกว่า social innovation หรือว่านวัตกรรมทางสังคมขึ้นมาแต่ถ้าพูดภาษาชาวบ้านก็คือคิดโครงการดีๆขึ้นมาแล้วทุกคนในฐานะเยาวชนก็ดีในฐานะสมาชิกสังคมก็ดีสามารถมีส่วนร่วมในการช่วยกันคิดสิ่งเหล่านี้ให้เกิดขึ้นได้นะครับผมโดยเอาทั้งแนวคิดเชิงธุรกิจแนวคิดเชิงบริหารจัดการแล้วก็แนวคิดเชิงสังคมและจิตวิทยามาผสมผสานร่วมกันหรืออย่างสิงคโปร์อย่างเงี้ยเขามีกฎหมายอันนึงซึ่งกำหนดว่าอพาร์ตเมนต์ทุกที่ต้องมีคนแต่ละสีผิวอยู่เปอร์เซ็นต์เท่าไหร่คนมาเลคนจีนคนอินเดียอยู่กันต้องมิกซ์กันในอพาร์ตเมนต์เดียวกันเพื่อให้เกิดความแตกต่างหลากหลายในพื้นที่อยู่อาศัยมากกว่าอยู่แยกกันไปก็ทำให้กระบวนการของการเข้าใจซึ่งกันและกันไม่ได้จบอยู่แค่คนคนเดียวแล้วแต่ส่งต่อเข้าสู่สังคมผ่านโครงการหรือโครงสร้างอะไรสักอย่างเพราะฉะนั้นก็เลยเข้ามาสู่ช่วงขายของโครงการในวันนี้นะฮะโครงการ Youth Collab นะครับโดย UNDP นะครับผมเป็นหนึ่งในโครงการที่อยากกระตุ้นให้น้องๆเยาวชนทุกคนสามารถเข้ามามีส่วนร่วมในการลดทอนความขัดแย้งและป้องกันความรุนแรงในสังคมได้โครงการ Youth Collab นะครับเป็นโครงการที่จัดขึ้นเป็นประจำทุกปีของ UNDP นะครับเพื่อที่จะให้เยาวชนน้องๆทุกคนเนี่ยสามารถเอาความคิดดีๆความคิดสร้างสรรค์ของตัวเองมานำสู่ความเป็นจริงได้โดยธีมของ Youth Collab ในปี 2019 เนี่ยนะครับก็คือ Embracing Diversity หรือว่าการเปิดรับความแตกต่างในสังคมซึ่งก็อยากให้น้องๆในช่วงคิดโครงการอาจจะเป็นโครงการเดี่ยวๆหรือเป็นธุรกิจหรือเป็นอะไรก็ได้ก็ตามแต่นะครับส่งกันเข้ามาฟอร์มทีมนะครับ 3-4 คนนะครับผู้สมัครอายุได้ตั้งแต่ 18-29 ปีนะครับผมมีไอเดียอะไรส่งกันเข้ามาได้เลยนะครับตั้งแต่วันนี้จนถึงวันที่ 30 กันยายนสงสัยข้อมูลอะไรเพิ่มเติมนะครับเข้าไปดูกันได้ที่ www.youthcollabthailand.org ผมเองก็อยากเห็นทุกคนนะครับเป็นส่วนในการช่วยกันคิดช่วยกันตีโจทย์ให้แตกว่าทำยังไงให้สังคมไทยไม่ดำเนินจากจุดที่อยู่ตรงนี้ไปสู่จุดที่ความขัดแย้งจะรุนแรงมากกว่านี้นะครับผมแล้วทุกคนสามารถช่วยกันได้ครับลองมาสมัครกันดูครับกับ Youth Collab ครับ
And 2 weeks ago, we had the final event in Bangkok, and I'm very happy to share with you that we had 3 very innovative and dynamic winners, and the number 1 that came out of the competition is a really interesting group because they represent, I think we could not have thought of a better symbolic way of also having almost like UNDP ambassadors. I'm saying this because we're talking about a group of young people from the deep south of Thailand who are also members of the LGBT community and who have decided to use in a social enterprise model cuisine, food preparation, catering as a vehicle for peace, meaning that what they do is that they bring recipes from, I guess, their heritage and their homes and their mothers and fathers, and whether they are from a Malay Muslim community or from a Thai majority community, they cook together and they offer services of catering to anyone who's interested. And you have in your plate, a kind of a representation of social cohesion, of multicultural diversity of Thailand to enjoy. Right? So this social enterprise is the one that won the Youth Collab on prevention of violent extremism this year, and of course we'll have another Youth Collab later. So what we have seen is a few of the themes of UNDP. Right? The issue of social cohesion I've just mentioned, the issue of youth engagement. Right? So this is the segment of our work that relates more to our governance work. The second video is completely different, and this time we travel towards northwest in the beautiful area of Huay Ka Keng. Right? And we'll look at the second video.
พอวันหนึ่งมีเจ้าหน้าที่เข้ามาบอกว่าต้องคืนผืนป่าให้กับป่าแล้วเนาะเพราะว่ามันอยู่ติดกับเขตรักษาพันธุ์สัตว์ป่าคือแล้วจะให้หนูไปทำอะไรกินนะหนูไม่ออกยังไงหนูก็ไม่ออกหลายปีประมาณ 2-3 ปีได้คือเริ่มมีปัญหากับสัตว์ป่าเก้งกวางหัวแดงแล้วก็ช้างที่จะเข้ามาทำลายทั้งกลางวันกลางคืนต้องไปเฝ้าไปก็มันก็ไม่ได้ผลมากขึ้นแล้วไม่มีเงินจะใช้ไม่มีเงินให้ลูกไปโรงเรียนแล้วก็ทำมันเป็นพืชเชิงเดี่ยวที่ทำปีนึงได้ผลผลิตครั้งหนึ่งมาคำนวณดูแล้วเนี่ยได้300 กว่าบาทต่อเดือนมันไม่พอกับรายได้ของเราแน่เลยสู้ไม่ไหวแล้วพ่อก็บอกว่ายอมเถอะเพราะว่าพ่อก็แก่ขนาดนี้แล้วก็เลยตัดสินใจว่าออกไปซะก่อนนะไปเป็นกลุ่มแรกเราอาจจะมีอะไรดีๆที่เขาจะช่วยเหลือเราก็ได้อย่าทำมันนะอย่าทำพืชเชิงเดี่ยวนะที่เนี่ยต้องเป็นเกษตรแบบผสมผสานถึงจะอยู่ได้เพราะว่าเขาให้ที่แค่4 ไร่ 2 งานในที่ทำกินก็มีคนหนึ่งเนาะชื่อลุงโกเขาขับอีแท็กมาจากห้วยคดเพื่อจะมาสร้างชีวิตใหม่สร้างบ้านใหม่ที่นี่ที่พื้นที่ช.1
ผมก็ไปถ่ายทอดวิชาเขาการปักหลักมั่งการมัดตะข่ายอะไรเงี้ยช่วยเขาหมุนเวียนกันอยู่อย่างนี้เนี่ย
เกษตรกรที่ทำเนี่ยก็คือเป็นเกษตรกรที่ทำพืชหลากหลายชนิดนะครับลักษณะของการทำเกษตรปาณีตไม่ที่สิ้นสุดแค่เกษตรอินทรีย์แต่เรามีความหวังที่จะให้ชุมชนเป็นชุมชนที่เป็นมิตรกับสัตว์ป่า
มีคนรุ่นใหม่ค่ะที่มาจากที่อื่นคือมาจากห้วยคดมีความคิดเดียวกันช่วยเหลือกันในการทำกิจกรรมต่างๆก็ได้คุยกันว่าต่อไปนะ4 ไร่ 2 งานของเรามันจะทำพืชเชิงเดี่ยวไม่ได้แล้วนะเราจะต้องช่วยกันอย่างรวมกลุ่มปลูกผักเพื่อจะได้มีพ่อค้าคนกลางมารับซื้อในจุดเดียวเราจะได้ไม่ต้องไปวิ่งขายตามตลาดนัดซึ่งรายได้มันก็ไม่แน่นอนที่นี่ในอนาคตก็คือมันจะเป็นบ้านของเราแล้วก็เป็นบ้านที่มั่นคงด้วยทั้งความเป็นอยู่แล้วก็เรื่องรายได้เราไม่ต้องไปรับจ้างที่อื่นไม่ต้องเข้ากรุงเทพเพื่อจะไปทำงานตามโรงงาน
แม้ว่าศูนย์การเรียนรู้ของเราเพิ่งเริ่มต้นได้ไม่นานแต่เรามีความหวังจากการเกื้อกูลของคนรุ่นหนึ่งสู่คนรุ่นหนึ่งสิ่งสำคัญทุกคนต้องมีหัวใจกล้าที่จะเปลี่ยนแปลง
Those of you may have recognized what we call in the UNDP sphere our tiger project. It's always funny to say this because I don't think anyone has seen a tiger in the video. Right? Now, of course, we know they exist in Huaycakeng Reserve, but it's not only about tiger preservation, but it's also on the how we do preservation, right? And how UNDP facilitates dialogues and approaches where we look at a better balance between preservation of wildlife in this case, and of course continued development of the local community. They need to live there, they need to have an income, they need to have a livelihood, they need to have hope and home. How do we do that? Right? So this is probably one of the strengths of UNDP is to bring together different players, and instead of looking at a confrontation, because agendas are different, we facilitate through dialogue solutions that are beneficial for both the wildlife preservation, but also ensuring that the farmers in the area of Huaycakeng continue to live of what they have done for decades and centuries, which is farming, but introducing new technologies, new techniques of farming for a better living. Right? So our work more on livelihoods, on biodiversity preservation, on environmental and natural resource management. Right? So through those two videos, we thought it would be a good segue into our conversation on the spectrum of the types of work that UNDP does and how we do them, by always having, of course, people at the center. So now we can go to the slides. I was too impatient to get into them earlier. And let us first look at the first one, which is a slide that explains a little bit why we're having this meeting now. Right? So the timeline that you have on the screen shows 2019, where we are today, which is a year rich of events. Right? Of course, we just had the ASEAN summit conclude like a week ago, I think now, right? Which was very important for Thailand. We also had earlier in September several very important events in New York at the General Assembly. Right? The climate summit, for example, was a very important one. If you go at the beginning of the timeline, we've decided to highlight 2015. Why? Because obviously 2015 for us is a very important year, and when I say us, it's the global community. It's the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals and kind of the opening of a phase of 15 years where countries all around the world have agreed to achieve 17 very important development objectives. Right? Another, I think, important milestone in the history of Thailand will for sure be what we had earlier this year, the national elections. We have colleagues from the parliament with us this morning. This, in terms of a return to democracy, a strengthening of democratic values, of participation of people in decision-making, is extremely important for any country, and something that as UNDP we of course welcome and want to build upon. In the same vein, we know that are in the preparations local elections that should take place next year. This we see as an amazing opportunity, again, for strengthening democracy, but also for our inclusive agenda, right? Making sure that more and more people have a voice and are being listened to in terms of their aspirations for development and for where the country is going to go. Right? So a very important time period for Thailand, both from a national perspective, but also an international context. And therefore for us, a period between 2017 and 2021, which are how do we position UNDP to support Thailand go through this transition? Right? And 2017 being the beginning of our country program, and 2021 being the end of it. So 19, of course, is right in the middle. So all that we are getting now in terms of consultations and feedback and suggestions and ideas, we're using it to, of course, make sure that the second part of our country program period is the best it can, but also to plant the seeds of what will be the next country program cycle for UNDP that we will, of course, discuss and negotiate with the government. So that's for the timeline. Let's go now at looking at the broader framework that we use in UNDP for our development work. We'll start, we're an international organization, so let me start with the international commitments of Thailand. And first and foremost, again, the Sustainable Development Goals. And very quickly, I want to make 2 points. The first one is to show you how extremely aligned the SDGs are to the vision that Thailand has adopted for itself. Here I will use the 20-year national strategy. Our colleagues from NESDC are also with us this morning. They are extremely familiar with this exercise of demonstrating how the 3 core values of the vision, stability, prosperity, and sustainability, which are at the heart of the diagram that you see in the slide, right? And the 6 areas of the vision, very easy alignment, substantive alignment with the 17 goals of Agenda 2030. Right? So this, as a result, increases a kind of a substantive comfort for UNDP to feel very much at ease when we look at the SDGs as our main reference point. Right? Now, the second point I want to make is to show you the progress that Thailand is making on not all the 169 indicators and targets, that would be too long. But I want to highlight a few, and of course we've selected them with a purpose. The first one, which very much is at the core of the whole Agenda 2030 objective, the eradication of poverty everywhere for everyone. Right? And here we have very good numbers for Thailand. Right? Thailand, as an upper middle income country, has achieved a very remarkable success in reducing the number of people that live in extreme poverty. This allows, of course, now for a more qualitative approach and to really focus, instead of focusing on quantity, to really focus on the quality of the life that we offer to the people in Thailand. And one of this quality indicators is, of course, the place of women. How are women faring, in decision making? And here already we unpack the information and we see not consistent information, right? Not fully satisfactory in my view. We see very good numbers when we look at the private sector and a very steep increase in the role that women have taken in the economic life in Thailand. Right? And we saw this a few days ago when we had private sector in this room. Many ladies were at the tables. Right? But when we look at the political side of the equation, the number of women in parliament, right? We are way below international average and even more below what is considered and globally accepted as the target for countries, which is for the moment about 1/3. This is what the average objective is. Goal 6, I leave you to read, but it is an important one because it's one that we hear a lot about when we travel, especially in the rural areas, right? And how for a country that is still very much reliant on agriculture for a large segment, not only of its economy, but even more so of its labor force, how the issue of water is being managed. Some have too many, some have too much water, some don't have enough. The timing is wrong, right? So it's the whole question of governance of water resources. Not so much anymore of accessing water. Everybody has access to water, but how we govern the resource. Next slide, please. Very similar on goal 7, which is the goal that is dedicated to accessing energy for economic development and consumer use. Here again, Thailand has done extremely well when it's about ensuring that people, have a plug nearby. Accessing electricity, electrification of homes is not an issue anymore in Thailand. That's great news. What is, however, still, work in progress is ensuring that the source of this energy is what we would say environmentally friendly. A few weeks ago, the Secretary General of the UN was in Thailand, and one of the key messages that he left us with, us being the Thai government and us the UN, is what he called the Thai addiction to coal. Right? How the country has struggling to move away from producing its energy from coal. Why? Because coal is plentiful and cheap and easy, and the infrastructure is mostly supporting coal power plants. But of course we know that the impact on the environment is very negative. So the energy mix is what we are looking at now in terms of goal 7, sorry. I've given some numbers on the first slides. Let me now switch to another way of looking at progress that countries are making, which is on regulations and legislative aspects, right? Whether the countries have adopted for themselves laws and regulations, frameworks, vision documents that push the country in the right direction. Right? So here on the slides we see that whether it's on climate change or whether it's on disaster risk reduction to improve the resilience of the country, we have important pieces of legislations that have been adopted by Thailand which are going in the right direction. Also some important results, for example, on goal 15, right? On the way that, and going back to the second video that we've seen, the way that Thailand is managing its wildlife, right? Still not perfect, but we see again good progress, and this is being translated in now a different ranking for the country on international concern lists. Next slide, please. We get to the last two goals, 16 and 17, very important goals for UNDP. We've seen the first video on governance, and it's very important for the work that we do. Again, here we are highlighting a ranking of Thailand on human trafficking. You know, it's an issue for many, many countries, and here strong decisions and compliance have allowed Thailand to move up in terms of ranking internationally. And on goal 17, we talked a lot about this in the context of public-private partnerships, for example, for development, and how the private sector in Thailand is extremely motivated and mobilized around the SDGs and really have a good understanding on how it is high time now that the song about making money and profits, right, is kind of toned down or enriched with also a song about contributing to the well-being and the development of the country and its people, right, from the private sector perspective. So good signs there. So this is a little bit a quick overview of a very important reference framework for UNDP, because obviously the areas where Thailand is not doing as well is what guides us in deciding where we should engage the country. Right? And of course, congratulating the country and its government on where it's doing good. Maybe on governance, the last point, I see Kuniralak is here with us, and we were commenting about this earlier this morning, the adoption and the passing by the cabinet of the National Action Plan on UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Right? A very important piece of legislation that is going to allow now companies to benchmark themselves, you know, against this action plan. Work that we've done in partnership, in very good partnership with the Department of Rights and Liberties of the Ministry of Justice. Okay, so let's now look from an international perspective to a national perspective. And here, those documents, you know, as you know them way better than we do, but we thought it would be still important to put them back in perspective. We, of course, starts with the mother of all documents, the Constitution in 2017. A lot of conversations ongoing, whether we're going for amending, not amending, changes, you know, that's, of course, a Thai decision, but something that we keep in mind because it can guide us also in the type of work that we would be able to provide. The sufficiency economy philosophy, right? Very important in the way that development is undertaken and presented in the country, something that, again, we feel comfortable with because there's a very strong alignment with the principles of SEP with some of the values that are at the core of Agenda 2030. We've put, again, the national strategy, the 20-year strategy, but also the NESDP, the development plan that the NSDC is preparing. Some of the keywords that are in the box, you know, resonate very well with the work and the values of UNDP. So again, strong alignment. And then I'm going a bit quickly on this slide because for you, all government officials, this is your daily, it's your bread and butter basically. So I don't need to spend too much time on this. But on the legislative agenda, the one that has already been passed and the one that's in under discussions and in progress, you know, again, we see a lot of very important pieces of documents that UNDP will use or is contributing to in terms of providing global practices and exposure, you know, to those who take those decisions, either at the formulation or at the implementation. So again, a series of commitments of Thailand that we take into consideration, of course, that guide the work of UNDP, and where we really feel a good alignment of who we are compared to where the country has decided to go for itself. Next slide. Let us now move to a more analytical part of the presentation, and maybe the more important, how we in UNDP have looked at what we have done and what we have observed while undertaking the projects and the conversations, the advocacy that we have done over the past few years. And this has led to the identification of 6 issues that we want to share with you because we believe they are very important for Thailand. The first one, and I've referred to this under the presentation on the SDGs and SDG 10 on reducing inequalities, is of course the issue of inequality. Right? We know, and I've mentioned it, that Late last year, on the basis of a report from Credit Suisse, Thailand won the title of most unequal country in the world. Statistics that I cannot forget is that 1% of the richest people in Thailand control 67% of the assets of this country. Right? And numbers like this you can find many of. But this one was, to me, extremely striking. Right? Now, why is it important? Well, we know that inequalities, if ignored and not addressed, can slowly but surely, take the country on a negative pathway. We see this in so many countries around the world these days. Right? What is happening in Latin America, in Chile, right now in Bolivia. No, sorry, yeah, Bolivia. Sorry, I always mix Peru and Bolivia. It's in Bolivia that we have an issue. Lebanon, right? My own country, France. When we call them the yellow vests every Saturday, right? They go and make noise in the streets. All those movements, Hong Kong, right, closer to here, right? All those movements of dissatisfaction of the public and their expression of this dissatisfaction, which can be peaceful, but which can very quickly become more violent and more negative, are in many, many cases fueled by a sentiment of unequal opportunities, of discrimination, of being left behind, of seeing a country and people, going to the malls and shopping and enjoying life when others, struggle to pay the electricity bills. Right? So a very important issue that the government, of course, has fully acknowledged and on which many, many of the work that UNDP does contributes to addressing it. And a lot of the work that the government is obviously doing, whether it's social programs, the way that it's looking at economic regional, some regional economic plans, are addressing. But something I think that is very central to our collaboration with the government. Another source of concern for us is, and now I'm referring to the second video, is the issue of environmental degradation. Right? Many of you are in this field, in this room, from Monterey and its various departments, but we know how Thailand very much relies on those natural resources. Right? The reason why, for example, tourism is so important in the economy is because you have natural resources that are very appealing to anyone around the world. And if those resources are decline, or if these resources are not well managed, that will have a direct consequence, not only, of course, on agriculture and forestry, etc., but also on tourism, for example. Right? So very important. Again, some statistics to back up our analysis. Right? And the key message that you see the video that we have shown you, this issue of balancing between human activities and economic development, and of course the conservation. Right? So the message is not, don't touch anything, because we have to continue evolving. Right? But do it in a way that is, of course, sustainable and that benefits a majority. This issue of environmental degradation is made even worse by the third issue that we want to flag this morning, which is the issue of climate change. Again, an area where Thailand is extremely vulnerable to. We have seen earlier this year the floods affecting large parts of the Northeast. We also know that and this is something that is very interesting, because you hear it from the scientists, but you also hear it from the farmers themselves. Right? Recently, we were at a meeting with the Royal Irrigation Department. They were telling us, and when they talk to people in the field, people say, the weather is strange. Right? The patterns are very different. The temperatures are not the same. The seasons are changing. It's not supposed to rain when it rains when it's not supposed to rain, etc., etc. And of course, it's true in Thailand, but it's true in the region, it's true in the world. And this is one issue that does not recognize boundaries. It crosses over. What is very important to us, and I always flag this, are the numbers in the upper left corner, right, which really highlights the vulnerability of Thailand and its land when we know the importance of agriculture and agriculture-related activities to the economy and the livelihoods of so many people in Thailand. Right, so something that we also need to take into strong consideration. The fourth issue, and brings us more at the core of what you do as government officials, which is, of course, the issue of how do we manage all this? How do we manage the environment? How do we manage the economy? How do we manage the relationship between the two? What kind of governance systems we have in place? Now, if you combine all those four first factors, we get to the fifth, which again we have put in the center of the diagram for a reason, and that's the big issue of social cohesion. Right? If you take inequalities, if you take limited governance efficiency, and if you put an externality factor like environment and climate change that push, and bring additional challenges, all this leads to challenges to social cohesion between those who have and those who have not, those who feel they are taken care of and those who feel they are being discriminated. And we've set those issues to social cohesion in three categories. Some because of the representation and the participation, so more a political related issue. A second one more economic, right? Access to resources. Do I have land? Do I not have land? Do I have an identity? Do I not have an identity? Right? That then gives me access to resources. And then the third one, which is probably one of the most interesting and complex, is of course the issue that relates to the multiculturality of the country. Right? The notion of nation and the issue of identity. Right? Something that we are all aware of and something that the country is grappling with, and which for us, foreigners, we look at a sign of richness for Thailand. Again, if we come as tourists, it's because we find it amazing how not only the natural resources are rich, but the people are so rich in culture and heritage. Right? Some other people see this more as a sign of fragility. Right? So how do we manage this again between the two? And finally, the sixth issue that we wanted to flag with you is a bit of a different type of issue. It's more already on the side of the solution, but something that we see emerging as a really powerful phenomenon, and that's the issue of innovation. Right? We see it popping everywhere. And this is due to the creativity of the individuals in Thailand. This is due to the dynamism, to the demographics. Right? A lot of factors, but huge potential when we look at how we can harness innovation, which is not only technology-driven innovation, right? It's also about questioning simply how we get organized and how we do things. And clearly here, we've put some words that we keep on hearing, right? This issue of fourth industrial revolution. What does that mean? Right? Yes, it's full of opportunities, but it also raises a lot of questions about the quality of the education in Thailand, for example. Right? How innovation is definitely a reality, but can also be a source of further inequalities. Think of the notion of digital literacy. Right? To access a lot of this innovation, you need to know what we in this room all take for granted. And we know how to use a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop. Right? But you go in other parts of the country, of course, this is less a reality. Right? So if more and more services are only available online, for example, well, what does that mean for somebody who is not online? I agree with you, there's fewer and fewer of those, but still, that's something that we have to ponder about. So those 6 issues are the ones that we believe in UNDP are the ones that are not only central to the challenges that the country is faced with, but also to the work that I would say both government and UNDP
For those who do not know the United Nations Development Programme in Thailand, we are a member of the UN country team in Thailand. And in Thailand, we have 19 UN agencies with programs and projects here, and we are one of them. Our work is very much driven, as Renaud was saying, by the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, by our own corporate strategic plan for UNDP, the United Nations Program Assistance Framework, which guides the UN's work in Thailand, and of course our own country program for Thailand, which was endorsed by the Thai government in 2017. And finally, the mandate which has been given to us by our member states, including Thailand itself, to be the integrator function of the 2030 Agenda. The integrator function, because it's recognized, and I think you will all agree, that the SDGs is a very complex agenda, it's extremely interconnected, and we realize that there is no way development solutions, programming, policy, and financing can be designed and developed in a very siloed manner. We have to look at those issues in an integrated fashion. And I think the example of the Tiger project you saw earlier is exactly how we look at development issues in an integrated manner, not just from conservation, but also livelihood and other elements that you saw in that video. But we can talk more about this later. So in Thailand, UNDP's work is framed around two broad areas. The first one is climate change and environment. It's actually the largest program that we have here in the country. And the second one is governance and social inclusion. On climate change and environment, two broad sub-pillars. The first one, sustainable natural resource management and biodiversity conservation. And secondly, climate change related efforts both on the mitigation and adaptation front. Just very briefly, how do we work with our partners? And I think here many of you will resonate with some of the work that I'm mentioning. We work very closely, for instance, with BEDO in terms of helping local authorities integrate biodiversity conservation into their planning and budgetary process in selected areas of the country. Here it's about connecting biodiversity and governance at the local level very much. We also have been working for many years now promoting community-based organization across the countries and supporting them in efforts on land use management, but also on climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. This is a program we have been doing for a small grant being given to those organizations. And a new interesting program which we are now developing with BEDO, and it's linked to what Renaud was talking about, Thailand facing the threat of unsustainable tourism development and the impact that that has on environmental degradation, and how do we look at those issues more seriously moving forward. We are designing a new program to promote more biodiversity-based ecosystem tourism in the country. This is hopefully for next year if we manage to mobilize the funding for that. On biodiversity conservation, it was mentioned earlier, Thailand does face a number of challenges when it comes to critical habitats and endangered species which are being threatened with extinction. So we are working a lot here with our partners looking at gaps in legislation and in policies, and also providing more cross-sector learning and coordination across various entities working on those issues. Linked to conservation and biodiversity, the tiger is an important part of it. The tiger, as you know, population in Thailand is threatened with extinction. They are mostly concentrated in the Hua Ken region, which was mentioned earlier, and they are facing extinction because of encroachment, poaching, loss of habitat, and also illegal wildlife trade, among others. So I don't have to say much, but I think the video was very telling in terms of how we are looking at protecting and preserving the tiger population, whilst at the same time bringing on board local communities to cohabit with wildlife in this particular region. Since I've mentioned about illegal wildlife trade, I think it's not just the tiger which is facing issues when it comes to illegal wildlife trade in Thailand. We also have problems with ivory, rhino horn, and pangolin. where we've seen a large number of statistics indicating threats with regard to illegal trade. And because Thailand is not just a transit country, it's also a destination country. So together with our partners, DNP within Monterey, we have a program to basically strengthen the enforcement of laws, but also to have dedicated behavioral campaign to change attitudes towards those issues. And in addition to that, of course, because wildlife trade has a cross-border element, working on improving coordination between officials, Thailand, Malaysia, and Thailand, Laos, for instance. On financing for biodiversity, Thailand has a financing plan which spans from 2018 for the next 5 years. So here again, in terms of addressing the financing gap for Thailand, we are working very closely with our partners to look at innovative financing solutions to basically close the gap. Thailand also has important obligations to report and update on its progress linked to important biodiversity targets it had committed itself to. So we are providing support here to help Thailand, for instance, report on its convention towards biological diversity. On climate change, very briefly, on the mitigation side, linked to the fact that Thailand has a large number of natural resources which has very strong features in terms of its carbon sequestration, we are supporting the country on how to sustainably manage those resources. One of them is the peat swamp forest. I'm not sure how many of you know, but this is an interesting natural resource which has a very strong carbon sequestration feature. And we are working here in the Kwan Kren landscape, which is the region with the second highest concentration of peat swamp forests in the country. Not just in terms of protection and preservation of the forest, but also looking at strategy and policies for sustainable land use management of peat swamp forests. Another interesting initiative, and I'm glad that colleagues from DEPA is here. We're working in 4 cities, in particular Chiang Mai, Khon Kaen, Nakhon Ratchasima, and Koh Samui, in supporting policy and planning towards making those cities more smart in relation to their low carbon strategy. And finally, on adaptation, we have a number of programs with several partners here, especially with us. One of them is with our sister UN agency, the Food and Agricultural Organization, working very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture in integrating adaptation measures in the agricultural sector in the planning and budgetary framework of the country. Renaud talked about the whole issue of water and water management in the country earlier as being a big challenge for the country. So currently with our partner, the Royal Irrigation Department, we are designing a new program to promote more effective water management and sustainable agricultural practice in the Grand Chao Phraya Basin, which, as you know, is extremely vulnerable to drought and flood. And it's also at the same time the most important watershed for Thailand in terms of providing water, not just to Bangkok, but also other parts of the country. And finally, on climate change, and this applies to both mitigation and adaptation. On the financing part, in terms of helping Thailand implement its nationally determined contribution towards the climate change agenda, we are supporting Thailand in looking at different measures and mechanisms to promote investment in climate change efforts, both on the mitigation and adaptation. And again, on the reporting side, similarly to biodiversity, Thailand has committed itself to a number of conventions and international obligations, one of which is the United Nations Framework on Climate Change framework. And here we have been closely working with our partners for many years now in helping Thailand produce its national communication as well as its biannual update reports. The second broad pillar I mentioned earlier of UNDP's work in Thailand is on governance and social inclusion. I will go very quickly here just in the interest of time, but also because Renaud also mentioned some elements of it. So 3 broad areas here in terms of promoting gender equality and human rights, social cohesion for peaceful and just societies, and finally on promoting integrity and good governance. On gender equality and human rights, I think UNDP, I was not here, but at the time has provided some very specific support to certain laws and bylaws which have contributed to the Gender Equality Act. We have also, and I'm glad we have partners here from the Ministry of Justice, provided comparative analysis from other countries which has fed into the Civil Partnership Registration Act, which, as you know, is still being looked at by the cabinet. When we talk about the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, we were very honored to be a partner to our Thai government in terms of helping them shape that document, and we look forward to working very closely with our partners to implementing this important agenda for Thailand, which is in line with the United Nations guidelines on business and human rights. We also have a very strong inclusion and human rights dimension in our climate change work, which I mentioned earlier. For instance, working very closely with UNEP, we are looking at how we can put to the forefront the important role that women play in relation to climate change mitigation and adaptation. We also, and this is something which is upcoming, looking at how we can strengthen the resilience of people with disability in the context of climate change and natural disasters, where we know very well that this specific group of population is extremely vulnerable when it comes to certain events that others may not, be as vulnerable as. So this is something we're very excited about, and hopefully we will get the fund to implement it. We have recently also engaged in some interesting work with regard to improving the digital literacy of women with disabilities. We know that women in particular face multiple and different vulnerabilities, and women with disability, they face even more vulnerability in the context of the future of work. So we're for a very small initiative, hopefully to reach out to more partners in the future. We're trying to see how to improve their employability through digital literacy efforts. And finally, when I talked about the LGBTI community, working very closely with our different partners here, trying to address issues of stigma and discrimination that this particular group of people face in Thailand. On promoting social cohesion for peaceful and just societies, I think that video you saw, the first one, is actually very telling in terms of how we engage, for instance, youth through innovative means to come up with ideas, solutions to address social cohesion in their respective communities. We don't just engage with youth, but also women's group, civil society at large, in terms of how to promote peace, human rights, tolerance, and respect for diversity across the whole country. And finally, on integrity and good governance, working very closely with our partner, the Controller General's Department, we have been providing technical support towards the Public Procurement Act, which was passed in Thailand a couple of years ago. As a continuation of that engagement and partnership, we are currently looking at how we can bring expertise and best practices from other countries to help Thailand align its procurement and bidding process to international standards. That's one example. Sorry. But also on, Renaud talked about anti-corruption earlier. So one interesting initiative we have with the Coalition Against Corruption, which is an alliance of more than 900 private sector members, is to look at how the private sector sees corruption in the country and where they feel actions need to be taken. So we hope with that effort we can also bring a platform together where we can have the private sector and the public sector talking issues which are extremely pertinent to the Thailand society. So this is briefly what we do and in which areas of work we engage with very closely with our national partners, but also subnational partners, private sector, civil society, and of course the communities at large. How we work, these are just some examples of how we engage with our partners, and we provide support on different fronts, bringing policy advice to the table, supporting project implementation, bringing different tools, methodologies, and mechanism. South-South cooperation, not just in terms of bringing different practices to Thailand to inform its development agenda, but also sharing what Thailand has achieved. We've heard a lot of areas earlier to the region and to the world on a number of fronts. Innovation, this is our DNA in everything and everywhere we do. Public-private partnership, this is something that you've seen in many of the examples I've been mentioning in terms of forging a more public and private sector interaction on different development agenda. Youth engagement, no need to say more, I think you've seen that through the video. And of course, adopting throughout a human rights-based approach to the work that we do. We work with multiple partners, not just with government. So these are a range of partners with whom we work, not just in Bangkok, but beyond. Next, please. This is where we work. Many of the initiatives I've mentioned to you are not just in Bangkok, but cuts across actually throughout Thailand, from north to south to east to west. Finally, from my side, we just wanted to share with you a little bit our reflection in terms of some important lessons learned throughout this journey in Thailand so far. And we'd like, of course, to hear your thoughts about this in the next session as well. One of them is our interest to move beyond. I think Renaud mentioned we've done already 3 important consultations so far with the private sector, civil society, and our development partners. And increasingly, we are realizing that not everyone knows who we are and what we do and how we work. So we would like to go outside also of Bangkok to make sure that we communicate and advocate on different issues that we work in the periphery as well. Our work with the private sector, we'd like to be engaging with the private sector in a much more strategic manner so that we align their efforts to the SDG agenda of the country. Next, please. I think all of you here, many of you will recognize that through our different programs and projects, we've tested a few pilots and demonstrations in numerous areas. The challenge and the opportunity is now to take those efforts to scale so that we ensure impact and sustainability of the results. We often work through projects which are time-bound and also financially bounded. And what we have seen throughout, an important lesson for us is to make sure we have a very strong exit strategy when we design our programs together with our partners, so that when the project ends, we ensure that the results we intended to have is sustained and continues. Next, please. I think I've mentioned that a little bit across the board, and also in the survey you will hear a little bit later. We've been told that we don't know who you are, what you do, what's your contribution to the Thailand economy. So we feel that we need to be more proactive in our outreach and our communication efforts. We also work, and that's how we operate, through projects. But I think earlier I've mentioned now with the mandate we've been given by our member states to play an integrator function for the 2030 agenda. What we'd like to see moving forward when we design some of those new initiatives I've mentioned earlier with our partners is to look at development in a much more holistic and integrated manner when addressing one specific challenge. Next, please, and I think that's the last one. UNDP very much also operates and relies very strongly on funding from our donors. And Thailand, being in an upper middle income country, we feel that the resources from the donors are not sufficient. And we've been facing a number of challenges to mobilize resources in that regard. So we would like to also look in the future on how we can diversify our partnership and reach out to other partners to mobilize resources, not just financial, but also non-financial. And finally, as much as, Renaud mentioned that we are in Thailand for the people, but our main counterpart is the government and will remain the government, we also want to engage more constructively with the legislative and the judiciary component of the whole government system.